We just got done turning these engine cases into an absolute work of art. In this episode, we're going to take a big pile of parts and we're going to turn it into an absolutely screaming two-stroke engine. If you guys are new here, my name is Chase. This is episode 4 of the 2001 YZ125 Build series. Let's get going.
So it's time to start popping these bearings in. I'm going to go ahead and heat this case up a little bit, and then I had my bearings sitting in the freezer overnight. Got those nice and cold with the hot case. They should drop right in. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to expand the metal of the case. That expands the engine case, and then the bearing with the freezer that shrinks it because cold contracts. And then from there, we could drop them right in. Now, in theory, this bearing should drop right in. Assuming you don't go in crooked like I just did. Take a socket that fits around the outside and just tap it on in. And when you're tapping those in, the case is going to have an audible sound change when the bearing seats all the way. Let's go ahead and get this little guy in. Go ahead and put a little dab of, oh god, more than a little dab on that one, blue Loctite on your keeper here. And go ahead and install it. And I'd really like to be using stuck nuts because I've heard everything about the toner on blue Loctite trying to shut down trails in Colorado. I don't have any stuck nuts yet. I'd love to get some. Unfortunately, right now I am using Loctite. Not that it's a bad company, I just am not down with the whole thought of shutting down trails when we don't have enough already. Go ahead, put a little bit of assembly lube in these bearings here, nice and greased up so we don't have any dry spells when we start it the first time here.
All right, now it's time to install our crank bearing.
Make sure when you're installing these bearings you check all the way around. Make sure it's flush and even all the way around the bearing surface. And if it is, you know you've got it in all the way. This side's all good, all the bearings are in. And now we get to do it all again, yay!
Now, if you guys are doing this and you're having to beat on the case really hard, take a step back, make sure you're not going in crooked. If you are, you're gonna have to restart. You don't want to force these in too much because you could end up damaging the case if you're hammering way too hard.
If you guys are curious on how you remember the orientation of this stuff, it's a good idea to either take pictures. A lot of times you can go on Rocky Mountain ATV, look up the OEM diagram. That will give you a good idea, or you could reference a factory service manual. Those are all very helpful resources to have when rebuilding an engine. Anyone can do this stuff. It's all about having access to the information you need while you're doing it. It's basically like going to school looking at a repair manual or service manual. So if you are intimidated to do a bike build, don't be, because there's so much stuff out there today where you can look it up. You could find a rebuild video on this Y125 on YouTube. You could look at that and that'll guide you through. So don't be too scared if you feel like you're getting over your head. I promise you it's all right. You just got to keep on going. Okay, that's all the bearings in this side. We got the other side done. Now I can get this nasty piece of aluminum out of the way that's making everything dirty because I don't want to burn my workbench down. Now it's time for the fun part. We're getting there. Go ahead and slide. Oh god, kind of fun if you don't drop everything. Like I just did. All right, take 2. Go ahead and slide our transmission in. Now it's time for the fun stuff. So as long as you take out the transmission in assembly and you reinstall it in assembly, it goes really easy. It only gets a little tricky once you're taking the gears apart and you got all those washers and spacers to deal with, but as long as you take it out in assembly and put it back in assembly, it's super simple. If you do take it apart, you could always reference Rocky Mountain or your parts or your repair manual, and that'll tell you where all those shims and stuff go. But what I'm doing, I just cleaned it up real well and we just slotted it right back in. Get our shift drum in there. Exactly what I mean here. I've got Rocky Mountain up for getting my shift forks in there. All right, because I couldn't remember how they went back in. There we go. The goal with transmission assembly is you don't want to force nothing. So if you're putting in these shift forks and the shift fork pin is bent or it's trying to come in at an angle, you got to readjust something. You don't want to force anything. It could be a little tricky. There's definitely a procedure you do, but the main goal is don't force anything. Make sure you get it set in nice, you get it right, everything's functioning. You can spin free, you can move around your shift drum, catch your different gears, as we can see here. And it's going to work a little wonky until it's fully bolted down and secure, but there it is. Transmission is complete.
So if you guys remember, I was talking about that crankshaft in the last video, and I got it in my vise here, and I'm taking a closer look at it, and you can see right there, it looks like a piece of the actual threads broke out, and it's matching about the same size chunk as this right here. So that's definitely what broke off on the crank. The part heat welded to it right there is actually part of the crankshaft. So we're going to go ahead and try to knock that little burr off, clean up this, and try to see what happens, see if we can save this.
I don't know how stuck this is on there, so I'm going to try to take a little putty knife and just kind of lightly tap this. Oh, wow. Okay, that was a good idea. And that is completely smooth. That's all the way off. Nice. Now I'm going to try to clean up these threads a little bit right here so nothing else breaks off and we run into the same issue again. Right now I'm just using some 600 grit sandpaper and I'm kind of shaving down these tough edges. I don't want to go too much because I don't want to throw the crank out of balance. And I hope this little chunk being off isn't going to affect the balance of the crank too much. But I've got that smooth enough where I'm not worried about anything breaking off and eating into the case. And you know what? Since it's right here, it's in the vise, it's easy to get to, I'm going to go ahead and pop this piston out. There she goes. You can see this piston is roached. Time for a new one there. Needle bearing doesn't look terrible, but always, if you're doing a top end, replace your needle bearing. It'll save you a bunch of time, bunch of heartache too. Oh, now I'm getting excited. It's time to drop a crankshaft in. We've got smooth operation. Got a little bit of cleaning to do on the gasket surfaces that I missed. I'm gonna go ahead and get those cleaned up real quick. And we are gonna be using, it's about time for it, Pro X gasket kit. And then we also got new dowels as well, since a lot of these were seized in there and I had to twist them out and they got all deformed and everything. So Pro X kit, new dowels. Let's go ahead, get this thing going. I always like to take a little bit of brake clean on a towel and spray some brake clean on a towel and wipe off the gasket surface just to get all the oil and assembly lube off, just so we have the best chance of sealing. It's always good practice to, when you're installing these new dowels, just put a little bit of anti-seize on there, because that'll help dowels from not getting stuck in there, so you could reuse them next time. So just a little bit of anti-seize before you put them in goes a long way in the future. All right, so looking at the service manual here, you can see right here that you're going to be applying sealant for the gasket surface. So there's no crankcase gasket on the 01 YZ125. I've seen this many a times, I just wasn't sure, and for some reason when I pulled it apart, I didn't even notice I didn't have to scrape any gasket off, just a little bit of gasket surface. So what I'm going to use is Honda Bond on a Yamaha. It's the same thing really as Yamaha Bond. It's just as good, if not better. So go ahead, I'm going to put some Honda Bond on this and we will be sealed up. By the end of this, it's going to feel like your wrists are going to fall off, and that's what you want. slap this on, I'm actually gonna put this crank seal in. These go in the same way you put your bearings in. A lot of times you can get the seals in with just your fingers, but if you kind of get to a point where you can't, take a socket that fits around the outside of the seal perfectly and just lightly tap it in. Sometimes you might need the help of a rubber mallet and just lightly tap around the outside. That is one bottom end assembled. We got to put some bolts in this, guys, and we're there. Now we can start working on this side. I'm excited. Oh man, where did my bolts go? Can't find my engine bolts. Oh, I found them. All right, guys, it's time to start bolting this engine case together. All right, let's start bolting this together. Oh wait, is that the right? Gotta figure out the lengths, hold on. Hey, what's up, man? Oh, hey, what's up, man? What are you up to? Oh no, I'm just bolting up this bottom end.
Oh, nice, nice. What bolts are you using?
I'm just using these. Yeah, they look a little old and nasty, but.
Oh, no, I ain't having that. Mm-mm. What? Like, I don't see the big problem. They're just bolts and like, you should be ashamed. On a build like that with those old stripped out bolts, nah, you're using fast metric. But in all seriousness, guys, fast metric fasteners is the way to go if you're looking for a factory style engine bolt kit. They offer bolts in zinc plating and nickel plating if you're looking for that awesome works look. All the bolts come beautifully packaged, labeled in separate bags. It's a wonderful thing. High quality OEM style fasteners. Fast metric also offers plastic bolt kits for your bike. And for example, on this Yamaha, the year for the engine bolt kit goes all the way back to 1983, which blows my mind. That is awesome. And they offer track packs, small assortment and large assortment of bolts. So if you go to the track, you lose a bolt, a lot on these two strokes, they rattle out, you'll have it with Fast Metric. Guys, make sure you check out fastmetric.com for all your bolt needs. And a huge thank you to Fast Metric for helping me out on this build. It is much appreciated. So now that the side of my face is stinging from getting smacked real hard, let's go ahead and throw these beautiful Fast Metric fasteners into this crankcase. So it looks like the torque spec on these are about 120 inch-pounds, which seems a bit high if you ask me. So I had to take a minute and stop there on the build because I heard the doorbell ring and it was time to engineer RoArm, the future of bike builds, or sorry, bench builds. Check this out, right? It's an old microphone arm stand, or new, that I modified the ends to accept a 1/4-20 thread, and now, whenever I'm filming an engine, you guys could be right there with it. And then you got something over here, flick it out, extend it, or back to the engine. It's awesome, I love it. So, let's go ahead and try it out right now. All right, so we got a couple of seals to install. Let's go ahead and start with this shift shaft seal here. Shift shaft is in. Go ahead and get the seal for the sprocket in there. This here is the little spacer bushing that goes in where that sprocket goes. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these Prime-MX cleaning wheels and get this thing shined up like new. That looks a whole lot better. Guys, make sure if you're building a bike or anything, these Prime wheels are amazing. Prime is not a sponsor of the channel. I just really like Prime and I really like these wheels. So if you guys are needing something that makes parts look absolutely amazing, go ahead and pick up a set of these Prime-MX wheels. You don't want to forget to install these keepers. These will make a big difference in the end. Reinstall this, a little bit of blue Loctite, torque this to spec. Okay, so before we continue on the other side, we're going to try to address this clutch basket.
and you can see all these grooves in here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try to take a file and we're gonna try to file those down smooth. A lot of times you can. Just make sure you don't have too big of a stair step or anything, which we look pretty good here. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can file these smooth. Some of you guys might be asking, well, why not just replace the clutch basket? If you're thinking that, you are right. The clutch basket should be replaced, but this is something you could do. It will work. And my goal really right now is to show you guys what you can do if you don't have a bunch of money, how you could save your clutch basket if you are really notched out. You can only do this once. So once you file it down one time, after that, if you pull your bike down in the future and your clutch basket's notched again, you're gonna have to replace it at that point. Okay, so we got that basket nicely filed down. This one, I'm gonna say, is good enough to run. Like I said, this is the last time this basket can be filed down. After this, we're gonna have to replace it, but this one is gonna be good to go. One other thing you guys wanna check for is severe notching in your inner hub. This will also get notched out really bad. This one's a lot harder to save, so usually when these go really bad, you end up replacing them, and if this is super worn, that's going to be super worn. It's good just to do it, just to replace it. But this one's good. Our outer basket's good. Let's go ahead and start assembling. Make sure your snap ring is all the way in place. Oh, jeez. I always put too much on. Jesus. Oh, jeez. What am I doing? Back in time. I've got all this shift assembly to put together. Definitely is helpful to assemble what you need to assemble. Torque our shift drum down to 30 Newton meters. Looks like our springs drop in here on each side. Looks like something like this. Take your bets now. Is it gonna fly across? Oh, like butter. Come on. You don't get that lucky. That was sweet.
So yeah, there I am celebrating my victory, even though I did the entire thing wrong. So I ended up taking this apart about 4 or 5 times to get it right. Eventually, I finally got it right, and I ended up stopped recording because I was getting frustrated. Cameras were dying, and I just couldn't get this figured out. So the next scene you guys will see will be this assembled, but it was a nightmare for me. Once you understand it, it's super simple. I just wasn't understanding it, and for some reason, I refused to check the service manual. I should have just done that. I looked at their service manual. I was like, oh, okay, that's how it goes. So yeah. Look at your service manual. Don't be like me.
Yeah, you know, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I just struggled for a long time. But anyway, back to business here. Hey, let's go ahead and get our clutch assembled here. So I've got a brand new clutch here, soaking in oil. Let's go ahead and get this guy installed. Gonna go friction first, and then steel with the rounded side up. Friction, steel, and repeat. So this thing should feel amazing when it's done. And we have an extra one. That's kind of cool, I guess. A little concerning. Then we want to get these torqued down to 10 Newton meters. Very happy to say that we are getting there. So we've got our other case all prepped, ready to go. Let's go ahead and put our fresh gasket on here and set our case in. Let's go ahead and grab our wonderful fast metric fasteners, and we're gonna go ahead and start getting this sucker on. Go ahead and get these torqued down to 10 Newton meters. Okay, we gotta put our clutch cover on, but we gotta do one thing, and that is fix this right here. The threads on this were stripped out, so what we gotta do is we gotta use a Healy coil, and we gotta drill this, re-tap it, or we gotta drill this, tap it, put a Healy coil in, and then this cover will be ready to go on. I'm gonna be using what's called a Healy coil kit, and this here is the Healy coil, which is essentially kind of like a spring, but what you'll do, you'll drill out your hole. Then after that, you'll take your tap, run the tap through, and then when this with this fancy tool here, this clips onto here, you thread it in, or sorry, like this. This clips onto here. You thread your Healy coil into the threads you tapped, and then now you have repaired threads. So we're gonna start with our drill. You wanna make sure when you tap this, you're tapping your threads straight. You don't want to be crooked. That'll really make your life difficult, and it won't end up working out. You run your tap in a ways, so you see it poking out the other side. Go about 3 or 4 more turns. Come back out. I'm going to put a little bit of thread locker on this Healy coil. I always go way too much. And what you'll do is you'll take your tool and you will thread insert in. You see it going in, and now from where you were, you'll turn your tool 90 degrees and you'll smack it, and that breaks the little tang off inside. So now you can see that Healy coil in there, and now our bolt threads right in, no problem. Perfect. It's time that we there it is. All right, so we got this bottom end together. Finally, it took a while. Now we're gonna be installing the cylinder studs. And like I was saying in the last video, guys, these are 2 different lengths. So on this side is gonna be your longer cylinder studs. And then on this side is gonna be your shorter cylinder studs. So what you guys want to do for checking ring end gap is put your ring in your cylinder like this, and take your piston and push it down just a little bit, square it up right about there, and then this gap here, right there where the gap in the ring is, you're going to take a feeler gauge and you're going to measure in that. And there's a spec for this. Now Wiseco, it didn't come with a ring end gap spec, so generally the rule of thumb is 0.004 inches to every inch of bore. So for example, you have a 3-inch bore, you'd have a 0.012 inch minimum ring end gap. So I'm going to go off of that because I couldn't find the exact, and this cylinder is bored out to a 130 as well, and we're going to go ahead and check this ring end gap, see what we got. We're looking for a minimum of 0.008. So with our feeler gauge 0.008, we're going to go ahead and measure this gap, and we're good there. Let's go ahead and jump up and just see where we're at. I think we're going to be about 10 thousandths here. Nope, we're bigger than 10. So we're sitting about in Yamaha's spec of 20 thousandths. I believe that's the Yamaha's spec on these YZ125s. So I'm comfortable running that. Make sure, guys, when you install this, you don't have the end of the circlip in this opening here, and you want to make sure it's seated all the way around. That's the important thing. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and install our piston. First thing you want to put in is the wrist pin, and then you want to look at the top of your piston. There should be an arrow on the top of it, and that side is going to go towards the exhaust. So we're going to be putting this piston in forward. The arrow points to the direction of the exhaust. Slide our piston over our wrist pin, bearing I mean. And my other camera just died, so we're going to be on GoPro for a while. And now's the fun part, installing the circlip in the other side and not dropping it and losing it as it goes flying across the entire, and I mean the whole thing, the whole garage. Be patient with this step. Once again, make sure you have your rag in your bottom end because things can get messy here. And I mean messy fast. And I also recommend not ever letting your finger go off of the hole until the clip is fully seated in its position, because I've had them sometimes where you get them in there and they come flying out on you. Now we're going to be installing our piston ring, and one thing you want to look out for is a number stamped onto the piston. Right here, this one says N50. That number, usually when there's a letter or a number or a symbol on the piston ring, that means that side goes up. So you'll want to install your piston ring. Be careful because these can break easily. I like to kind of work mine on just like that, and you're looking for an alignment dowel on the piston. Let me show you real quick. Right there on the piston, you can see that little tiny, it kind of looks like it's brass piece, and you want the ring, the end of the ring centered in that, so when it squeezes, that's going to keep the ring from sliding around in a circle. You want it about centered in there. So I'm going to kind of put a nice healthy light coat 2-stroke oil on our piston here, so when we slide in our cylinder, we're going in nice and smooth and we're not rubbing against anything. Once you get it, you can slide your cylinder on. That's the hand torque wrench because I don't have one of those fancy Motion Pro tools, but I need to get one. Oh yeah. See if we're pulling compression. Oh yeah. I did get these power valves as cleaned up as I could. I couldn't go crazy on them, but I did get them nice and cleaned up. Just got all the big carbon off of them and everything. I'm gonna put just a little bit of dielectric grease. I'm gonna put just a little bit of dielectric grease on these O-rings for the head. That lubricates them a bit, and that also helps them keep in their home. That copper looks sweet against that bronze. I like the way that looks. These will get torqued down to 21 foot-pounds. Cylinder head is on and it's looking absolutely beautiful. One of the last pieces to the puzzle on this side is going to be this governor case. We do got one more thing to install, and that is this clutch arm. I went ahead and cleaned it up really nice with those Prime MX wheels. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Okay, clutch arm is on. I'm gonna go ahead and get this stator installed. And you guys ever been doing something, you're in the middle of something and you realize there's something you forgot? Or I just came to the realization that I forgot to bend up the washer on the clutch hub. And now I have to go back in and open up that side and bend that up. And it's 12:30 in the morning. All right, just for the sake of the video, I'm gonna use this old one, this old boot that's all ripped up. I gotta see what these are gonna look like in there. So we're just gonna loosely put them in. We'll change them out later, of course. Oh yeah, that did it right there. That looks beautiful. Just as I expected, I did not bend it down. So let's go ahead and bend that. That could have been bad. I'm glad I thought about that in my whatevers. This is one absolutely gorgeous engine, and I cannot wait to hear it screaming in that 01 YZ125. I'm not gonna leave you guys like this. We're gonna do a sweet montage right now. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. This was a lot of fun to rebuild this engine. It took some time. We were in here for quite a while today. I had to do some steps backwards and stuff like that, but I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like. It helps out a whole bunch. And guess what? We've got compression again. We didn't have compression before, but we got compression now.